Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guest today is James Carnall. He is the head of cyber at Red River Technology. James, good to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
And let's give our audience an update on the cyber situation right now. What are the top concerns as we head into calendar 2024 here?
Well, there's many concerns we could be here all day just talking about that. But I think, let's talk about some of the areas of focus to address some of those concerns. So if we talk about identity management, that's an area where organizations have to really understand how to be much more sophisticated there. One of the biggest attack vectors is through phishing, right? And scams that allow people to get access through ransomware and other types of techniques where we're essentially socially engineering the individual to give me access. And so some of the processes and procedures, some of the assets we give individuals are being exploited to get people access. And quite often when we hear of hacks, in a traditional sense, they're not hacking the system as much as they're hacking the process and the person.
Right.
So identity has to be an area of focus this year, and we have to get that right. And we have to be pushing our partners and the community of vendors out there working on this problem to keep stretching and making it easy for the person. Because again, we're all the weakest link, right? We all cut corners. We are reusing passwords. So having that sort of concept of something I am, something I have, and something I know, essentially can get us partway there, but we need to move much more quickly into a much more sophisticated identity sort of protection capability.
And this is an area where the cloud can't really protect you, because if someone has credentials gotten illicitly, they can get to the cloud just as easily as they can get to your own data
whatever
center.
system, whatever access, it really sort of depends on what it is that they want to access with the credentials they have. And of course, what we're seeing is very sophisticated targeting of individuals to essentially with the goal of going after whatever the crown jewels are. And so that transitions into the next item on the list, which is data, right? Who has access and where is it? And that is much more difficult than it seems to assess, right? We're all creating data every day. We've got systems, we've got a lot of security capabilities now that are generating logs and other information, but we have customer data, we have transaction data. I mean, we're all about collecting as much as we can and creating as much as we can. And obviously, in some cases with AI, we'll be exploding the volume of information that's being created by individuals who are using those tools. So we need to classify it correctly, know where it is, and know who has access to it. So that identity data. And I think the last thing we're going to see a lot of challenges and excitement by is just the changing landscape of how security and technology takes place, right? We have a number of organizations out there still looking to transition to cloud-related infrastructure, hybrid cloud, and other types of technologies that make the organization much more dynamic, that allow people to work from anywhere, to have whatever technology to access the network. And we're seeing that zero trust sort of concept come into play where, again, its ultimate goal is to allow us to be on any device and be anywhere and be secure through the whole organization. So I think those are three concepts that will be invested in and will need to be really seriously looked at by organizations in the next 12 months.
And if you look at things like FISMA, and if you look at things like the Executive Order 14028, right, cybersecurity is a major compliance effort.
Well,
but
yeah.
then if you look at what CISA is putting out,
yes,
it's also a big technology effort. So how do you divide, as an IT person, how does one divide their time in the government with compliance and with the actual technology of securing things?
It's an extremely complicated problem. And look, we sort of look at security from a perspective of, am I managing to the auditor or am I managing to the adversary, right? And we have to do both in security. We have to do that. So talking about the IT side of the house, we have to come to terms with the guidance and the regulations that are in place, right? You mentioned, PCI is the credit card. We've got FINRA and FISMA, and we've got HIPAA, and you name it. We've got a lot of these types of compliance regulations we have to map to. Some laws, some have very big impacts. And so a number of the organizations that we work with every day are managing transactions and the data that go along with that, and managing healthcare data, and managing all of the different aspects of our lives. And so the sophisticated organization has to start with, okay, let's do a bit of an audit here, see what we have, see what compliance regulations we have to map to, and see where they overlap. And essentially, again, this is one of these areas where zero trust being spoken about can help an organization sort of do that initial assessment and map to those areas of compliance, and also meet some of their protection goals from the adversary point of view. So again, it provides a great baseline and a best practice, and certainly regulation or the executive orders insist that we share information about these types of breaches, because one, if we're a victim of it, we shouldn't have to wait a year and a half to know that our data's out there. And two, if we can share it with a community of trusted industry experts, essentially they can learn from that and get those patches and that information out to other potential victims, organizations more quickly and efficiently.
All right, and zero trust in the executive order, it's had a big impact. I mean, that's all agencies talk about.
Yep.
Will zero trust make things miserable for users, or can this be implemented in a way that is compliant, meets the executive order, and actually protects things without driving people crazy?
Yeah, I hope it doesn't make us miserable. Look, my take on that is it's a couple of things. One, there is a culture shift. There is a thinking shift. There is an alignment in the organization that has to be done. So we have to look at it. Our leaders within business have to look at this as not just an IT problem and not just a security problem, but a new way of allowing the business to be free of some shackles that we've had in the past. We always recommend you start with an assessment so you know where you are, right? So you understand what the baseline is. Many organizations have a lot of the technologies they need. They may not be enabled the way they need to be, but they can start there and sort of start in small ways. But there is going to be some investment in infrastructure that needs to be made, right? Process, procedure, technology, understanding where things are in the business, understanding what the assets of the business are, right? What it is that we're protecting. These are all critical parts of that. And then once you start to move in this direction where you have that cultural shift, you should start to see some efficiencies. Automation, AI is going to help security professionals understand what is being triggered, what's being alerted, what vulnerabilities are out there much more efficiently. AI is going to help them search for certain CVEs or certain problems within their ecosystem, or the threat intelligence that comes is going to be enriched and improved to accelerate their ability to process that. And then there's going to be a freedom within the employee base, right? Things are just going to work no matter where I am. I'm going to have access, but I'm going to be restricted by my role. And that puts a sort of a natural discipline. So the incident responders have to do less work potentially, and the customers have, or the organization has less risk from a cyber insurance point of view, or if it's a government organization, less PR risk, let's say.
Sure. And of course, they always say about zero trust, it's not a product, it's a state that you have to build to, yet it does cost money. And I mean, what's a good approach with the resources that they have in agencies for IT to get the most cybersecurity for the dollars you have?
Yeah, so I think it's a good point that you make that look, there is going to be investment here. You do need to understand where to start, right? And start now, and obviously invest in what you have. You are probably going to have some people with some different expertise on the team than you have before. We see a lot of interest in sort of a SASE sort of movement to a sort of a hybrid or a potential cloud security profile, which again allows organizations to move away from the traditional intensive firewall structure to a more flexible cloud security posture. And so I think that you really want to look at, do I need to have network people and IT people? Do I look at the world like that, or do I look at outsourcing some of my security in unique ways that can reduce my cost, reduce the amount of people I need in training?
And of course, organizations have their people scattered. We have more and more remote people in the federal government, and more teleworking taking place. And so there are all these end user devices.
Yes.
Maybe discuss the role of securing end user. That's always a moving target.
Yeah, so I mean, we've seen a lot of sophistication in regards to the, endpoint detection and response. Those capabilities, because the endpoints are increasing, right? We've got laptops and phones and cameras and all of these essentially technologies that are exploding, and we want to increase investment in those ways, right? It reduces friction, allows us to be more mobile, more flexible. Certainly, with the pandemic, allowing people the freedom to work. And we also recognize that the quality of life for our employees is very important. And so if you have the flexibility within an organization or an agency to allow people to move more freely, you want to do that. I think this is an area where security can help, right? With the right sort of, again, talking about that SASE, that secure access service edge, or XDR, or these sorts of capabilities that allow us to monitor the endpoints, understand what behaviors are taking place, what risks, what transactions, what people are doing, limiting their ability to download apps or information that could be a risk to the organization. These are the sorts of investments that we're going to continue to see organizations make, and they're going to have more intelligence as a result of these capabilities that allow them to lock down their organizations.
And increasingly, of course, cloud computing is a big part of the infrastructure for agencies, multiple clouds. And that changes the Security Operations Center concept, and for that matter, the Network Operations Center concept. We heard a couple of years ago that there might be a merger of the SOC and the NOC. Where do you see the security operation, whether it's center or just security operations, wherever it is?
Yeah,
how's that going to change?
This is a great, thank you for the question. The issue with this type is just the investment, right? Think about it, there's 168 hours a week for 24/7. And if I have somebody with some level of expertise, I need 3 to 5 people to cover that for the year around the clock, right? The size of the organization you would need to be to have somebody in the seat that is an expert in every area of security you need from a monitoring point of view, but also from a securing it or incident response point of view, is overwhelming for most organizations and agencies to handle. And so we're seeing that sort of migration into SOC as a service, or essentially using managed service capabilities to handle that. And it makes total sense because, one, there's so many devices within your organization and so much threat intelligence that's needed, so much turnover in regards to the expertise needed of the team doing the work. And then, of course, you've got new technologies coming on board that people have to be certified on, trained on. And if you as an organization, as part of a zero trust migration or technology transformation, want to move to a different type of technology, these individuals within these sort of SOC as a service type areas can facilitate that for you, and you don't even have to put on the professional services team to do that migration. So, I think what we're seeing is people realizing it's an overwhelming amount of information, cost, investment, and we can do it in a much more cost-effective way, much more cheaply, much more efficiently, and be safer because of it, and have a security team that can focus on higher priority issues within my business.
Yeah, so when you say, the Security Operations Center, in terms of the amount of information that they generate, I can sense AI coming along here.
Thank you. Yeah, well, again, great segue. Look, we're seeing right now, again, a lot of our partners out there and organizations in security that are really invested in AI. And I think, look, the first step is a reasonable one. Let's essentially allow an AI engine to index what I have. And when I see an anomaly, let me research, ask it a question like a normal person, right? Which means that I can have people enter the industry that don't have the same high level of experience, right? So they don't have the same sort of instincts, because the AI engine can help me say, hey, have I seen this anywhere else across my organization? And I'm not going to tell you where to look. You should know all the ways, all the areas to look. And so that is an intelligent way to use AI. It's a fantastic step. And I think the next step that we'll see is that there'll be some areas of, if A, B, C are present, AI will say, hey, I'm going to quarantine this for you. And we're already seeing this in some cases. But we're going to turn that on, and we're going to have a level of confidence around that, where it not only is it going to do it, it's going to know how to alert me, and it's going to tell me in human language what it is that's going on, right? So I can have my very smart people just come in and have a look at it. And so to one of the earlier questions is, that's something that as a security professional I get really excited about, because instead of getting a bleep on my phone and then having to dig around to try and figure out going through multiple screens, it might just tell me exactly what's going on, and I can make a decision right there and then, yes, I'm really worried about this, or we can move on.
And so we've been talking about the network, we've been talking about zero trust and the mobility of people and the proliferation of devices and the proliferation of infrastructure with cloud. So looking ahead with this mobile workforce, it really seems like you almost as an organization need to take a data-centric approach. That is, everything's everywhere, networks are going, there's no perimeter.
Right.
So, and since data is what it is you're trying to protect ultimately, and
Yes.
not really the devices, those are disposable.
Right.
Then you need almost to focus on the data outward.
Yeah, look, again, for most organizations, the data is the asset, right? That's when organizations have to really sit down and say, hey, what is it that we are trying to protect? It is, your customer data, or it's financial data, or it's mission-related information. And with AI, right, and certain other areas around quantum or whatever, even encryption is sort of coming under some concern for organizations around that. Like, if they steal it today, in 5 years they'll be able to decrypt it, and then they've got the next strike fighter, or they've got the next diesel engine, or whatever it is that you're trying to protect. And so with zero trust, what's so powerful about that is that, look, if I assume breach and I don't trust any device or any person, right? This whole sort of, once you're in my building, now you can move, right? How comfortable would you be with a visitor who you allowed into your house, walking into your bedroom and going through your drawers, right? You may not have any sensitive data, but that makes us very uncomfortable, right? Let alone looking in my safe, right? So the concept of, hey, let's just essentially establish this, you have to keep proving to me that you deserve to be in this space, have access to this data, and it simplifies it, certainly for the security professional, for the IT professional, and for the individual as well, right? It sets boundaries, and again, from an organization, I think it's the great way to go.
Yeah, the simpler you can get it, the more effective you'll probably be.
Right, we don't want to laden the user, right, with a bunch of expectations and having to have a security backpack on them. We simply want to say, hey, look, we are going to navigate and create systems and process and procedures that assume that I know who you are for a moment in time, but I forgot you already, and now you want to go through the next door, we have to verify who you are again.
Well, listen, thanks so much for some great insight.
Thank you very much for having me. Really
My
appreciate
guest has been James Carnall. He is the head of cyber at Red River Technology. I'm Federal Drive host Tom Temin. You're watching Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, please visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search Red River Technology.